Welcome to the post-Christopher Nolan Legendary Pictures DC Cinematic Universe, a world where Ben Affleck is Batman. And you have to hand it to Warner Brothers because they seem to have truly stumped the internet. People just don't know how to react. Because I think they're just so torn between fear of Ben Affleck taking on this role and loyalty to this franchise, which is fascinating to watch to some degree because no franchise, I believe, in the history of filmmaking has had the kind of loyalty that Christopher Nolan's DC Cinematic films have enjoyed. And to Nolan's total credit, he earned that loyalty with The Dark Knight. I'm a huge fan of The Dark Knight. I feel it is still to this day the best comic book movie ever made, and it single-handedly gave legitimacy to the genre, which badly needed it after a lot of damage that was done by films like Joel Schumacher's Batman films, and I have to say Daredevil, which starred Ben Affleck. But every time there's been a casting decision that people have been nervous about, the fan base was able to say, "In Nolan we trust," and that kind of ended the conversation, or at least put a pin in it, as people like to say. However, you can't say that this time because this isn't a Christopher Nolan decision. Christopher Nolan is no longer involved with these films. Legendary Pictures has new office space. They are leaving or have already left the Warner Brothers lot and have a deal with Universal. So this is really the first step in the Zack Snyder, David Goyer, Kevin Sujihara era of DC movies. And I think that it's important to remember as we discuss this that we need to honor that break. That even though we might be torn and not be able to agree on a lot of things, I think we all have to accept and realize that Nolan is out, Legendary Pictures is out, and this is effectively a new, not just a new day, but really a new chapter that's separate for this. So it's not a new chapter; it's a new book for DC movies. This is different, and I think you can tell that it's different by this casting choice. This is a very different casting choice. The original list of names that was floating around that I reported on, that was widely reported on when they wanted an older Batman with names like Josh Brolin and Ryan Gosling and Richard Armitage, that was a Christopher Nolan list. Ben Affleck, I feel, is very much a Zack Snyder and Warner Brothers list, a choice. So I myself am conflicted, and where I'm conflicted is that on the one hand, I have tremendous respect for how Ben Affleck has been able to turn his career around. I mean, of course, he did a great job with Argo. It won the Best Picture Oscar. He had such, people thought he was so snubbed for his Best Director nod for the Oscars that also got him a lot of favor in Hollywood. Deserved favor. He did a great job with Argo. However, on the other hand, all I keep imagining now is Runner Runner with capes. And you might be like, Grace, what's Runner Runner? And that is exactly the problem. Runner Runner is a film that's coming out in just a few weeks, so you should have heard about it, where he stars as this online gambling kingpin who's offshore, and Justin Timberlake is kind of like the guy he takes under his wing and into this life of crime. And I'm sure you've seen the trailer now that I bring it up, where Ben Affleck is this tough guy and he feeds some of his lackeys to sharks, and he has this line about if I ask you to take a beating, you say you take it, and then you ask me you want another, what else can you do next? Which I guess you could argue is kind of Batman-y. So that's what I'm worried about, because Ben Affleck is an interesting case where I think there is a strong disconnect between the quality of his work when he's just acting and the quality of his work when he's acting directing. I think he's very good at the latter, the acting directing, but the former, very rocky, and I think he still has yet to prove that he's good when he's just acting. So that's what makes me nervous about this. Second of all, I'm nervous that I wonder if they screen tested him with Henry Cavill, because they look so much alike to me that I would say that they almost will come across as brothers on the big screen. And I know that in the comics they draw Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent to look so much alike that it's a kind of an ongoing gag / frustration for comic book readers. And often the only way that you can tell them apart is that one is wearing a suit and is in a bad mood, and the other is more jovial and has glasses. And, I don't want that to be the case here. And I have no doubt that Ben Affleck can pull off kind of the Bruce Wayne persona that Batman uses as a mask. But the darker elements of the character, I'm having trouble seeing it. And I think that that's partially why Ben Affleck probably took this role. I think that this is a full circle for him. You might be wondering, doesn't he have George Clooney on speed dial? They made Argo together. Wouldn't George Clooney warn him and say, please, don't go this path. I've gone it. It doesn't work out. But I feel that Ben Affleck wants to make up. I think he wants to wipe Daredevil off of his slate. I think that he wants to prove that Daredevil wasn't his fault. And already there are a lot of people in the comment section defending him. You know, there's that loyalty, I think, crossing over to him that Nolan's movies enjoy, and that group is already defending Affleck and saying, hey, you know what, maybe Daredevil wasn't his fault, maybe that was the writer-director's fault. And maybe it was, we'll have to see. But I don't know, I mean, that's not the only bad movie that Ben Affleck has ever made, you know, if we're going to be honest here. But, you know, I can see why Warner Brothers made the choice. So that's why I think Ben Affleck signed on for this. And I think Warner Brothers chose him because he is their guy. Just like Zack Snyder is their guy. Warner Brothers is a studio, and Jeff Robinov is the one who did it, but he's gone. But Warner Brothers has invested a tremendous amount of time and money in these two talents, turning them around, making them legitimate stars. Ben Affleck does have a lot of fanboy street cred from the town and from Argo. You know, a lot of people who like Nolan's films are fans of auteur filmmaking, and I think they feel that Affleck does that. So he has enjoyed some loyalty himself from that group. So I think that Warner Brothers felt that that would play nicely here. So I think that's why they felt he was a safe choice. I also feel that they think that with those Oscar wins, he has the gravitas necessary. I would argue, however, that he does not. I think from a directing standpoint, he does have that gravitas, but I think as an actor, I do not think it's there. I think this is a miscalculation on Warner Brothers' part. I'm not saying it's not going to work out, but I think that the factors they're depending on coming into play aren't going to come into play. So that's my thoughts on this. I know a lot of people wanted Karl Urban. I think that, and I thought that Karl Urban's, the work he did on Dredd was phenomenal. He really wanted that role. He went after that role, and he delivered with that role. But you know what? J.J. Abrams really took Karl Urban off the playing field, off the board, because he put him in this television show. And there's just no way that they're going to put a television star or tentative star in the upcoming Batman Superman movie. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not sure. We'll see how the rest of the casting shakes out. I'm surprised to see this new DC Cinematic Universe going with a lighter tone. I think it's funny that Marvel is going darker while DC goes lighter. They're like ships in the night. What they both had going on was working so well. I don't understand why they are playing with the formula that is working. And we'll see who else is cast in this film. I know that I've been a strong advocate for Vince Gilligan coming on board behind the camera and Bryan Cranston coming on in front of the camera. My choice is Lex Luthor. A lot of you want to see him as Commissioner Gordon. But I have to say, with this casting, I think I would recommend that both of those guys pull back and hold out to see how this turns out. And I think you're going to have a lot of artistic talent that would have signed on for a Nolan film have the same reaction. I think you're going to have a lot of it's going to be hard to sign other people to this project at this point because they're going to be nervous for how it's going to turn out. You no longer have a slam dunk. You have an interesting gamble, but you don't have a sure thing, or as close as this is going to get to a sure thing. So we'll see how this plays out in the coming year plus. This doesn't come out until 2015. And it's a fascinating choice. It's fascinating to watch from the standpoint of seeing what it does to the fan base and to the franchise. So we're off to the races. This is a brand new era for the DC cinematic films, and we'll see how it turns out. How do you feel? Are you nervously excited? Are you just completely depressed that the Bale Nolan era is done? And what do you think? You know, where are you leaning? What are your thoughts on this? Talk us through your thought process in the comments down below, because I know your mind is reeling. Mine is. I'm not quite sure where to touch down. So write your thoughts down below. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Morning Movie News special edition, I guess you could say, because this is the only news that's coming out this morning, and our slow news cycle, just like that, has ended.